My name is Chris Cooper. I'm the Department Head of Political Science and Public Affairs and a professor here at Western Carolina University. And I'm here to talk to you briefly today about the survey results from the opt-in process. As you know, the opt-in process was a large one and included a lot of data collection, and the survey was just a piece of it, but I think an important piece. And so today I just want to talk to you real briefly about what we found and kind of how we found it. We'll start off by talking about just a little bit about the methodology. We considered a lot of different ways to do this: phone survey, mail survey, internet survey. All these methods have strengths and weaknesses, but we eventually decided that a mail survey made the most sense for us. First, it's relatively cost effective, especially compared to a phone survey. And also some of our questions took folks a little bit of time to go through, and we really wanted folks to think about it. And so we thought a mail survey made some more sense than a phone survey. And an internet survey wouldn't really work for our purposes because it's so hard to get a good list of folks in the region, a systematic list of their email addresses, in addition to there being some real problems with connectivity in parts of the region with certain types of folks. We eventually decided to do a sample of registered voters. This is not ideal. There's probably no ideal sample. In a perfect world, we'd talk to each and every person above the age of 18 in the region, but for time and money, we really can't do that. And so we try to take a sample. The logic here is pretty simple. Just like a doctor would take a small sample of your blood, we're taking a small sample to say something about the population. It is worth noting, however, that our list came of registered voters. So if you were not a registered voter, you're not in our sample, and there was no way to include you. Again, this isn't ideal, but there's some real benefits. These are people who have, to use a pun, opted into the political process in some ways, and so we really wanted to look at their opinions. We ended up with about a 12% response rate, which for a survey of this type is very good. What's more important, however, than the response rate even, is whether the sample looks like the population, right? We're trying to infer something about the region as a whole, and so we need to be able to say whether the people who responded look like the region. And in most ways we could look at, we found that the sample does look like the population. So I've just put up the county breakdown up here. You can look at that. It's not a perfect mirror, but it's pretty close. All of the counties are represented in approximately the same proportions they are in the region. It also looks fairly similar on gender, on age, at least as far as registered voters. We were even able to look up whether somebody subscribes to certain types of magazines, and it turns out that in most of the ways we can look at it, the sample looks a lot like the population. So this is good news for us moving forward. Go through the survey results very briefly. We started off with a section asking people to rate the importance of various issues in the region on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not very important, 5 being very important, and most of those questions were organized along the familiar pillars that the opt-in process used. And so for today's purposes, I thought I would just review which ones of these pillars folks tended to rate the highest. And you can see that the quality of life we expected, about 83% of the people answered a 4 or a 5 on these questions about the quality of life we expect. About 77% would say it's very important on the place we're given. The places we make, about 74%. The economy we need, about 68%. And the ways we get around, about 66%. So one of the takeaways here is that for all of these pillars, and even if you look at the individual questions, people tend to think that all these are very, very important. We're not asking people for trade-offs. We're not asking them to consider what's bad. Just, do you think these are important? And people do tend to think that they're important. So this gives us some idea that our pillars make sense. Interestingly, the types of people who responded higher or lower don't seem to vary in any systematic way. So a lot of the results in previous surveys I've done in this region have shown that the percentage of life somebody spends in the region is a large predictor of almost every attitude. Interestingly, and we think importantly, this was not true across the board here. There were questions where natives and non-natives differed, but they were the exception and not the rule. Along political ideology, along age, along gender, most issues we could look at, even along counties, there were no systematic differences. Okay, so Graham County might be different in one place, and Haywood in another, and Jackson in another, but by and large, it didn't seem that one county was an outlier in one way or the other. The second part of our survey looked at trade-offs. So we asked people a lot of these issues, again, aligned along some of the pillars, but we wanted them to consider whether they would want to do something with a trade-off. We know these trade-offs are inherent in policy decisions. So, for example, we would ask somebody a question and then say, would you want to do this, but if it required more regional collaboration and management? And we would ask people the same question, but if it required more local regulations, and then the same question, but if it required more local investment, including taxpayer investment. And the order you're seeing right now on your screen is the order they came in. People tended to prefer trade-offs that involve regional collaboration and management, then more local regulations, and then ones that require more local investment, including taxpayer investment. And that was interestingly consistent across the pillars. That's the order of trade-offs. As you might expect, fewer people tended to agree with the trade-offs, so we got a lot less support once we included these inherent trade-offs. We ended with a question, in addition to some demographics, asking people about who we should connect to. And so we asked people, what's the most important place for us to connect with? 78% of the people in our sample rated Asheville the highest. 14% Atlanta, and then Chattanooga, Knoxville, Greenville, Spartanburg about the same. Liberals were slightly more likely to want to connect with Asheville. In addition, people in the Atlanta media market were more likely to want to connect with Atlanta, and not surprisingly, those in the Chattanooga media market were more likely to want to connect with Chattanooga. And so that's a very brief overview of what we did and how we did it. There's a lot of questions on this survey that we didn't talk about today, so I really encourage you to go read the report to learn more about what we did, how we did it, and most importantly, how it affects the future of our region.